Welcome to NYC Now, your source for local news in and around New York City from WNYC. It's Friday, June 13th. Here's the midday news from Michael Hill.
Former Governor Andrew Cuomo and Assemblymember Zohran Mamdani are laser-focused on each other in the lead-up to Election Day. The two mayoral candidates traded barbs in the final debate of the Democratic primary for mayor last night. Cuomo argued that 33-year-old Mamdani has a thin resume.
To put a person in this seat at this time with no experience is reckless and dangerous.
Mamdani responded by revisiting Cuomo's record as governor.
I have never had to resign in disgrace. I have never cut Medicaid. I have never stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA. I have never hounded the 13 women who credibly accused me of sexual harassment.
Most polls show Cuomo is the front-runner in the race and Mamdani is second. Early voting starts tomorrow. Primary day is June 24th. New Jersey lawmakers are advancing legislation to expand the state's community solar program. The program allows low-income residents, people living in apartments, and others to use solar energy by tapping into nearby solar arrays. The bills would increase the program's capacity to 3 gigawatts, enough power to power 500,000 homes. This comes as the state sees skyrocketing energy prices. State Senator Vin Gopal introduced the bill.
We need more generation, and we need it quickly. The evidence shows that community solar projects are the quickest way to get electrons on the grid locally, and at the same time provide savings to middle-class and low-income families.
Green energy advocates say users of the program can see energy bills that are 40% lower. 77 and mostly sunny now. Showers likely mainly by 2 tomorrow and cloudy and cooler.
Stay close. There's more after the break.
NYC.
The 7 top candidates in the Democratic mayoral primary debated for 2 hours last night. WNYC's Brian Lehrer was one of the moderators. With early voting set to begin tomorrow, the atmosphere was electric, with highly charged race between Cuomo and Mamdani taking center stage. WNYC's Brigid Bergin joins us now to recap some of the highlights from the debate. Boy, we described it as electric. I'll say that's an understatement. Brigid, a lot happened, though, leading into last night's debate. Would you walk us through what happened yesterday before the candidates took the stage?
Yeah, Michael, I mean, it's some important context because it was quite a day. There are 2 things I want to focus on. First, there was some controversy over a flyer that a Cuomo super PAC, so a super PAC that's backing the former governor, was going to put out. It's unclear if it's actually gone out, but it was attacking Mamdani's record on Israel. And the image was manipulated to make Mamdani's beard look thicker. And the PAC says that the ad shouldn't have gone out. They don't know how it got on social media. It wasn't actually mailed out, but it is something that the Mamdani campaign really seized on. They said it should never have been done. For Cuomo's campaign, they said, they agreed it was something that should never have happened, but it wasn't a good look. Kind of brought up some history of things that have been associated with the Cuomo campaign in the past, and just sort of maybe hinted at kind of where this whole campaign is headed, which feels a little bit like towards the gutter. Meanwhile, you've got City Controller Brad Lander, who got a real boost yesterday. He was the top choice, not of the New York Times editorial panel, because they are not doing endorsements, but of this new kind of experimental panel that they've formed. But it's not something that most people would probably be able to make the easy distinction between. So he was pushing it as an endorsement last night during the debate.
As the front-runner in the race, Cuomo has emphasized the decades of experience he brings to the role. His closest competitor, based on the polling, Zohran Mamdani, is a 33-year-old assembly member from Queens. Did the experience gap come up between the 2 candidates?
Yeah, Michael, the moderators actually asked the candidates directly about this, and it was another one of these fiery moments that came up. Mamdani tackled the question first. He told voters to judge him by the campaign he's built and committed to bringing some the best and brightest into City Hall. Cuomo, who's 67 and has served as federal housing secretary, state attorney general, and governor, managing all manners of crises, really went after Mamdani.
Experience matters, and I think inexperience is dangerous in this case. Mr. Mamdani has had a staff of 5 people. You're now going to run a staff of 300,000 employees. He's never dealt with a city council.
And Cuomo went on from there. He's never dealt with Congress, never negotiated a union contract, never dealt with a natural disaster, and most importantly, has never dealt with Donald Trump. But Mamdani was ready with his reply. Here's about 30 seconds of that.
To Mr. Cuomo, I have never had to resign in disgrace. I have never cut Medicaid. I have never stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA. I have never hounded the 13 women who credibly accused me of sexual harassment. I have never sued for their gynecological records, and I have never done those things because I am not you, Mr. Cuomo. And furthermore, the name is Mamdani, Mamdani. You should learn how to say it because we got to get it right.
So a lot of heat there. Mamdani said he wants to bring the best and brightest to City Hall, and he even name-checked some really respected city leaders, Attorney Stephen Banks, and even former Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer.
The sexual harassment allegations against Cuomo only came up briefly in the first debate. Were they much of a factor last night?
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the ways that City Controller Brad Lander really made an impact. He brought a burst of energy to the stage, was on much more of the attack than we saw in the first debate. And one of the striking moments was when he went after Cuomo for the sexual harassment allegations.
Andrew, you admitted at the time that you called a 25-year-old staffer into your office and asked her questions about whether she'd had older partners and whether she was available, and intimated that you were looking for a partner. Everybody here knows that you sexually harassed women, that you created a toxic work environment.
And of course, Cuomo had an opportunity to respond. He claims that, talks about how those allegations were investigated by 5 district attorneys who never brought cases, and he called Lander's characterization a bold-faced lie.
Cuomo is considered the frontrunner. According to most of the polling, did anything happen to possibly shift the momentum last night?
Michael, he did take a lot of incoming, and unlike in the first debate, it seemed to rattle him a little bit more. Lander accused him of failing to pay immigrant workers hired by a company contracted by the MTA to clean the subways during the pandemic the proper wages they were owed. And Cuomo referred to them as illegal immigrants, which, of course, Lander immediately seized on. Cuomo was asked why he never visited a mosque and what message that sends to Muslim New Yorkers. And, he couldn't think of a mosque he had been to. I think it's too soon to know how much the momentum has actually shifted. Cuomo has millions in, campaign funds, and then, several PACs supporting him who have lots in the bank that they haven't spent and they plan to spend. But I think it's a real sign that this last week and a half is going to be extremely intense.
Now, since the first debate, we've seen increasing protests against immigration raids in cities across the country, and of course here in New York. How much did that come up in last night's debate?
Yeah, Michael, that was actually the first question from our own Brian Lehrer. Cuomo said he was experienced with dealing with President Trump and had stopped him before. Lander described how he'd gone to immigration court to escort families in and out. And Mamdani said that the NYPD now has been working with ICE, and under his administration, he would not let that happen, but he would instead build out the city law department. Adrienne Adams, the city council speaker, used something that is currently going on to talk about how she would deal with the Trump administration. It's work that she is doing now to block an executive order from the current mayoral administration. Again, a little bit of a longer clip here from her.
They want to bring ICE back onto Rikers Island, and the person that is endorsing me, she is the baddest AG in the nation. Her name is Tish James. She said, Adrienne, if Donald Trump starts to get in your way, sue him. So I am suing him. I am suing the mayoral administration and Donald Trump's ICE. We will continue to protect immigrants when I am mayor, just like I am protecting them as the leader of the city council.
And Michael, I was told that James was actually in the audience at that debate last night.
That's our Brigid Bergin on last night's debate. Thank you, Brigid.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. This is NYC Now from WNYC. Check us out for updates every weekday, 3 times a day for the latest news headlines and occasional deep dives. And subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
WNYC.